A very warm good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this International Educators Roundtable organized by ScooNews India. The theme for this 2 days event is making international higher education accessible and affordable for all. We are into day one of this mega event, and the specific theme for this session is promoting global citizenship with international higher education. I have with me for this session a panel of very distinguished speakers. May I request all the speakers to please put on their videos. And a very warm welcome to all of you. Let me begin with an introduction of our very esteemed panelists. We have with us today Ma'am Andrea McLeod. Andrea is Victoria University of Wellington's Regional Manager for South Asia and the Middle East and is based in Mumbai. She has lived in India for over 13 years now and has previously worked for the New Zealand Consulate in Mumbai and within the international development sector, thus having worked both in the non-profit and consular sectors. She enjoys interacting with students and helping them plan out their learning goals, as well as developing institutional partnerships as part of her work. She looks after student recruitment and institutional partnerships for the university. Andrea holds a Master of International Environment and Urban Management at the university from the University of Victoria of Wellington. This university is a research-intensive university and the first ranked university in New Zealand for research quality. Its research is robust, relevant, and multidisciplinary, drawing together expertise from across the university to address local, national, and global challenges. Thank you, Ma'am Andrea, for joining us today. It indeed is a privilege and pleasure to have you with us for this session. Welcome once again to this session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gunmeet. It's lovely to be here with you today.
Pleasure. Our next panelist is Mr. Srinivasan Sriram, Principal, the Man School, Delhi, recipient of the prestigious National Award for Teachers for Innovation in ICT from the President of India. Mr. Sriram has also received the National Computer Literacy Excellence Award, the KRD and WG Research and Excellence Award, and the School of Educators Award for Best Practice Innovation by AICOI. In 2015, he was selected as a Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert representing India at the Educator Exchange Global Forum at Redmond, USA. He was also selected as member of the Global Expert Educator Program from Smart Technologies in 2014. A finalist for Pearson Awards 2015 for excellence in teaching, he has been a resource person for NCERT for ICT curriculum development and National Repository for Open Educational Resources. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Srinivasan Sriram. We are indeed humbled to have you with us in this session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's a pleasure having me on the show to share my thoughts with you all.
Thank you. Our next panelist is none other than Mr. Himmat Singh Dhillon, who has led educational institutions in 3 countries, Principal and CEO of GEMS, our own English high school, Principal, the Gandhi School, Jakarta, and Executive Principal of GEMS Modern Academy, Gurugram. Mr. Dhillon, an alumnus of the Lawrence School, Sanar, was formerly head of Department of English at the Doon School, Dehradun. He now leads the school that he went to. Apart from being associated with the best of elite residential schools, he has worked as an editor with HarperCollins and provided technical assistance as a media and communications consultant through W.S. Atkins International to the European Union funded Doon Valley Integrated Watershed Management Project. Mr. Dhillon was appointed as chairman debating in the Association of National Plus Schools Indonesia and was also appointed the co-chair accreditation committee of management of the Association of Public Plus of National Plus Schools. He also served on the board of the Jakarta Schools Football Association. Thank you, Mr. Dhillon. Thank you for joining us today. Honored and privileged to have you in this panel.
Thank you, ma'am. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here.
We also have as our panelist, Ma'am Rashi Rodgi, principal of the Seedling World School, Udaipur. The school is affiliated to Cambridge Assessment International Education. With a teaching tenure of over 2 decades now, Ma'am Rashi has worked as an English facilitator across CBSE and Cambridge boards. She believes that the spark of a teacher's life lies in day-to-day challenges, and overcoming them is a ceaseless moment of celebration. She is a TEDx speaker and a published poet too. Thank you, Ma'am Rashi, and a warm welcome to this afternoon's session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's really a privilege to be amongst such erudite panel. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And once again, a warm welcome to the audience who are watching us live on Facebook and YouTube, and a warm welcome to our panelists. Before I begin, I must congratulate ScooNews for such a stimulating 2 days event, bringing together literally the legends of the education sector, both from schools and higher education. When the world is talking only and only about challenges of online education, ScooNews and Mr. Ravi, for who they are and what they are thinking beyond immediate challenges to talk about issues like global citizenship and international higher education. So welcome once again to this specific session on promoting global citizenship through international higher education. I begin by inviting each of the speakers for opening remarks. So may I begin, Mr. Srinivas, with you. What, according to you, is global citizenship?
Thank you, ma'am. I think global citizenship is, in a nutshell to speak, which nurtures personal respect and respect for others, social responsibility, global awareness, and civic engagement are the 3 terms that I can think about defining global citizenship. It encourages individuals to be diverse, think deeply and critically about what is equitable and just, and of course, a step towards minimizing harm to our planet. It's got high relevance in a globally connected world that we live in today. And of course, the cultural awareness and empathy, which goes a long way to prepare yourself better to compete in the global economy and a highly interdependent world. I think global citizenship is a must and a very important factor that should be given due credit in the current scene of things. And what better way to approach it using the international higher education as a forum to ensure that we live in a not only a safe, but a world where there is mutual respect for each other in times to come.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. I think no one could agree more with you than this, that a truly global citizenship implies social responsibility and diverse thinking and in a globally connected world. Ma'am Rashi, would you like to interpret the international higher education as mentioned by Mr. Sriram, who says that what better way to promote global citizenship than through international higher education? Would you like to interpret for us what you think is the true understanding of international higher education?
Certainly. Thank you so much, ma'am. According to me, international education is just not education, it's a way of life. It's a way of life that teaches one to be confident about who they are and respect their individuality, their uniqueness. It is, according to me, a system that helps one to identify their strengths and weaknesses, accept them with grace, and use their strength constructively and work on weaknesses to turn them into strength. International education, further, according to me, is all about awareness. Awareness about oneself, awareness about differences with others, awareness about being sensitive to differences, awareness about socio-cultural and economic environment, awareness about the challenges that range from one's home to the global level, awareness about sustainability, awareness about building a personality and character, Awareness about not comparing success to grades or marks. International education bridges the gap between disparity of academic scholars and practical scholars. And learners learn to believe in themselves and their skills and not in mechanized result or grade production. To me, this is international education, and I would like to comprehend it and convey it in this way only.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really, really well put, because anything begins with awareness. That, of course, is the first step. And with such a beautiful expression of awareness on all fronts, literally a 360 degrees awareness of all the dimensions that are important, all the stakeholders whose roles are important. Ma'am Rashi, you have very beautifully led us to set the context for understanding what global education, what global citizenship is. Mr. Dhillon, how would you perceive global citizenship? You are heading a boarding school. You've been to a boarding school yourself, which in a sense is a world within the world. So you have seen a mini world with its own challenges, with its own kind of a miniature of the reality outside. And Ma'am Rodgers talked about academic and practical scholars. Boarding schools take pride in churning out practical scholars, choosing ma'am's word. How would you look at global citizenship in that context?
Ma'am, I would completely concur with Mr. Shriram before, and then after that with Ma'am Rotagi, because in education there are no borders, and for us, wherever we are part of the main. John Donne very ably said, "No man is an island," and I would say no human is an island, because we are part of the main and we are in touch with others. And to start with, I'd just like to share a very fascinating idea. The idea is the butterfly effect. So the saying goes that if there's a butterfly that's fluttering its wings very innocently in the Amazon, it could cause a typhoon anywhere on the globe, including 3/4 across the world, and then travel on to the Amazon itself. Now, the point I'd like to make is that tiny things, small things do have linear impacts on a complex system. And that is what the world is. And see, you shared a very interesting idea about scholarship, having practical scholars, having academic scholars. I would say we must encourage both, because they're different intelligences. And ma'am, as we speak, we are in a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's very ambiguous. So how do our, I would say, community of learners, how do they negotiate a future that is very uncertain? Which is exactly where education comes in. It's exactly where global citizenship comes in. And it's exactly where international education comes in. So let's say you spend 6 months in Java or in New Jersey, you would come back with soft skills, you would come back with riches that are tangible. I'm sure good coffee and, good company, but definitely the intangible is the treasure that we come back with. And guess what? I feel wherever we go, if we have a learning mindset, we come back with great things and we contribute to where we have come from. So I'm all for education, of course, but I would say education that is globally minded, internationalism, not just a brand, not just a flag, but going beyond that to best practices. That is what I'm fascinated by.
Thank you, Mr. Dhillon. That was indeed very nice and interesting. I particularly loved the butterfly example that we all are familiar with, but it's a brilliant context setting in terms of its relevance. Ma'am Andrea, you have been associated with universities, and you have been you have come with a very, very rich experience with research and mentoring students from all over, from different backgrounds, from very, very diverse backgrounds. What role do you think universities play in educating children of today vis-a-vis global citizenship?
Thank you, Dr. Gurmeet. That's a lovely question to start with. What I think is that gone are the days when students will look at universities only for what their rankings are, or only for what is their employability factor afterwards. These will always be very, very important factors when choosing an education. But these days, when you look at a university, when you're choosing where you will undertake your higher education, one very important question is, what does this university do for the community? What does this university do for the good of the greater world as well? And in terms of this type of a mindset in a university, it doesn't have to be a university in the United States or in New Zealand. It can be an Indian university instead. You are looking for a university which is what we would describe as a global civic university. So the civic model is quite well known. It's a university that's involved in its community. It not only takes from the community, but it also gives back to it. It has partnerships, it has linkages, it looks for what good it can do as well as what it's good at. The global civic university model is one that takes that to the larger stage. The university looks at where can its partnerships do good? What type of research can lead to innovation and can help to solve the world's problems? I get students asking me these days, what's the sustainability rating of the university? I get them asking me, how are we looking to meet, the goal of being carbon neutral or the UN Sustainable Development Goals? And that is something that I love to see when I'm counseling students, because this is the way of the future. When we prepare students for the future, it's not just about what we teach them, it's about how we teach them. What type of ethics are built into our curriculum? What type of measures are in place on a university campus to ensure that it's an inclusive community there, that it means that all students are treated equally, that it is basically promoting those types of values to be a global citizen that you need. And I think in that aspect, you don't actually need to leave your own country. You can choose a university in your home country too, if it does have that type of an outlook and it does have those types of values attached to it.
Thank you, Andrea. That was indeed very, very useful to know. And I love the civic model concept that you are talking about. When we talk of global citizenship, the concept of common good is kind of inherent and comes with a commitment. Global education, global citizenship comes with an inherent commitment to global good. And the civic model university model is something that the children need to know more about. You also mentioned about the term that you used was inclusive community. Very often, unfortunately, we come across children who face challenges of discrimination, sometimes at the very local level, prejudices and biases, sometimes at the very, very local level, sometimes even in rural settings, in back of beyond towns. We witness degrees of discrimination. And then we also witness sometimes, unfortunately, degrees of discrimination, sometimes real and sometimes only perceived, which kind of deters some children, some students to think a little more broadly. What are your comments on this discrimination aspect of international education?
I think this is a very important factor that students consider. I get asked probably every 2 out of 10 students might ask me, they say, is there racism in New Zealand? Am I going to be treated badly? Do you know of any cases where students have faced racism or discrimination? And I think it's important that as an educator, you never dismiss those concerns. You shouldn't just go, no, oh, that's ridiculous. How can you think that? It's good to address it honestly. It's good to address it upfront. I think that every country that a student could inevitably go to will have some incidents of racism, but what does the university do in order to provide a safe space for students, in order to ensure that its teachings and its practices look to address structural inequalities? What do they do to address any type of incidents that the students face to make sure that they can't happen again? We're lucky in that New Zealand has very low incidences of racism, so I can usually tell them, you know, it will be okay. The students previously haven't had any issues. I think it is also a matter of both in the home country, at the school level, as well as at the university level. I do think it's very important that educators focus on, there's a term, unconscious bias. So how you've been brought up, the type of media that you've seen, things that you may have heard, it can lead to, sweetie, mama's in a presentation, just go ask Dada, please. It can lead to an unconscious bias where when you see a certain type of person, a thought comes to your mind. How do you address that? How do you get rid of those internalized prejudices that you might have within yourself? These are things that we can tackle as educators to ensure a safer society and to also ensure that the students that we teach are creating a safer society out in the world.
Thank you, Andrea. That was again indeed very helpful. You did mention about universities when talking about universities. You did mention that it goes beyond just international universities and that children must also look at home universities if they feel that those universities are providing them with what they are looking for. It has to be a match between what these children are aspiring for and what is in the offering by the university. Mr. Sriram, would you like to comment on the universities in different parts of the world and how each one of them is so, in a sense, country specific in terms of what they offer to the children at different levels of higher education?
Yeah, sure. It's been my privilege to be associated with my previous school, the Mayo College, where I worked for a good 30 years. And we had a fantastic outreach program and a great career counseling cell in the school, which helped me understand the various universities around the world and what they have to offer. First and foremost, I would like to say that it's a huge revenue generator for any country to, kind of facilitate international higher education by letting students come from different countries and being a part of their culture to understand the real deep insight into the cultural strength and the mutual cooperation that can happen between the countries for a shared human experience. Going by the various countries, let's take first the United States of America. They provide a number of good scholarships, but citizenship is very difficult. So cost of higher education is high, but as a country, USA promotes global citizenship, not in terms of just in letter, but in spirit, and offer help to many organizations around the world. UK, it's slightly cheaper than US, but a recent development in UK is they are offering a post-study visa, which can be up to 2 years, which were earlier only 3 months, that one can look forward to after finishing higher education, very highly reputed universities. And for India, it's a natural progression because we share a lot of commonalities between us. Scholarships, however, are few compared to US. Canada is again a very friendly country that invites people from other countries for higher education and of course offer work permits to a great extent. Reasonable in terms of cost compared to US, and they offer lots of scholarships too. Australia again is a great place. It works on a point-based system. So if you choose rural Australia compared to the urban Australia, like a Sydney or a Melbourne, you are in for longer post-study work permits that are available. And of course, citizenship is again a great possibility in case you pursue higher education in rural areas. New Zealand, Andrea would agree with me, a great destination for international education with some of the top universities, including the University of Auckland and many other, viewing for students from across the world, aggressively marketing for attracting good students, very reasonable cost, and of course, adding to the scenic beauty, the quality of life, and a great friendly prime minister in Jacinda Ardern. Germany, again, is a very friendly country that invites people for higher education. truly values global citizenship. And as Mr. Ashok Pandey was discussing in the first roundtable, students who possess B1 and B2 grades in German, entire undergraduation and to a great extent of higher education is completely free in public universities, not in private, barring a small semester fee that, of course, covers travel and basic facilities. 2-year work permits are available in Germany as well. France is similar to Germany. France, of course, have come out off late with what is known as Campus France, which even is set up in some of the tier 2 cities in the country, like even Jaipur and Madurai and all these places, attracting talent. Of course, France is more of a private university setup compared to public universities that are available in Germany. Japan of late is aggressively wooing students from India and other countries. Earlier, Japan was known only for its technological superiority, but today we have lots of universities in Japan offering management, liberal arts, and of course, international relationships. Hong Kong, again, is a great place. Hong Kong is one place where you do higher education there. It permits you work permit anytime in the career. You can come in anytime and work in Hong Kong. Lots of scholarships combined with programs with universities from other countries, a very cheap option. Singapore, again, is a great place to work. If you opt to work in Singapore, study in Singapore and work for 3 years in a Singapore origin company, a great extent of your higher education is subsidized. Abu Dhabi offers similar programs. And of course, other European countries like Switzerland, Finland, Netherlands offer great option for liberal arts, psychology, and STEM. Scholarships are rare though out here, but all these countries that I mentioned here look forward for that one single aspect, and that is about truly promoting global citizenship.
Thank you, Mr. Sriram. That was a brilliant bird's eye view. It seems I've trotted around the globe from the aircraft and peeped exactly into the Dean of Admissions office from my flight and got the best information that I could have. Thank you very, very much. That was indeed very, very exhaustive. Ma'am Andrea, would you, since we have you as the expert from New Zealand, while we have a brilliant overview of what international higher education has in the offering the world over, would you, as an expert of your own university, like to tell us something which is very signature to either your country or your university or both, through which our audience would benefit?
Sure. So I think New Zealand is a very attractive destination to international students. It's not as well known as, say, UK, US, Canada, which have had the more traditional markets. But what students realize about New Zealand is that there's 8 universities, they're all public universities, and they are all ranked in the top 3% worldwide, which is quite impressive for what's a small country. So when you come down, you get personalized attention, you get an education which is very innovative. It's geared towards preparing you for the future. There's a lot of practical components to it alongside. And because New Zealand is a country that has a very international outlook, we do encourage students to stay back and work afterwards. They get a 3-year work visa when they finish. And I find something like 84% of my students from India end up settling down there afterwards. Some come back, they start their own businesses, they go into good positions. Some go to other countries around the world, whether it's Singapore, UAE, Canada, UK, Germany. I like to track them because it's good to know where they are and what they're doing. In terms of our university, and there would be similar programs at other universities, what we do is we actually run extracurricular programs the students can sign up to for free, which are aimed at developing them as global citizens, as civic citizens. So we have an international leadership program that they can sign up for, where they are interacting with people such as the ambassadors of foreign countries, the heads of international organizations. They're doing reflective essays. We also have a volunteering program that they can sign up for, where they're getting involved in activities in the community. They're building up those bonds, and they are alongside it developing leadership abilities, self-management abilities. So I think those 2 programs are something that's quite unique to our university. The students I know who've taken part in them said they've had a fantastic time. It's something that's really added on to their academic education as well. And I think these are the types of additional benefits that students should be looking for when they're picking a university, whether within India or outside of India, where they're interested in a global career. Frankly speaking, most of our youth these days are going to have a career which was not going to be only locally focused. Whether they work overseas or not, they will be interacting with people from a variety of countries. They will be having to analyze information and research on topics from a vast array of subjects. And that's where the international component of education really benefits them, because it does prepare them for that type of work life afterwards, in terms of being comfortable with interacting with people from different settings, being comfortable with taking on new challenges, and then sort of working outside their comfort zone as well.
Thank you. And it's always very inspiring to hear about universities which have a very research-oriented focus, because that is one skill we in India in particular, along with many other countries, really are struggling. You also mentioned in the course of your apprising us about the extracurricular programs. Ma'am Rohtgi, we in India often understand and struggle about teaching to the concept. We are so lost in teaching to the exam. Our entire system, including assessments, hovers around teaching to the exam methodology and pedagogy. The textbooks also sometimes kind of reinforce stereotypes. As an educationist who has facilitated children through curriculum attached to the CBSE as well as the IGCSE international curriculum, what do you think is the role of school level curriculum in preparing children for a global education, and where do you think we are falling short?
Thank you, ma'am, for this question. And as rightly said by you, that I have actually tasted CBSE as well as Cambridge curriculum, and having a tenure of say 2 decades into actual education, being a real classroom practitioner, which I still am, I really feel, because since my school is associated with Cambridge Assessment International Education, I feel this curriculum takes an edge over our national curriculum. No offenses, I was a CBSE student, I taught CBSE, but that NEP 2020 that has been launched now is very similar to the baseline of Cambridge, which has been running for years. More than that, Cambridge curriculum actually focuses in developing a global aspect in the learners. They understand cultures through reading different texts from the books. Nothing is confined to the books. The extent of research is immense. Children are guided from very elementary level to understand, to go beyond the books, to research, to find out. And certainly it is not a syllabus-oriented curriculum, if I can say that, because we are not preparing children to fight the examination and score A stars. We are preparing them to be a real life learner, to be somebody who can perform or learn the skills they learn at school and use them for their life ahead. So when we talk about life skills development, I really feel Cambridge curriculum has an important role to play in the learners' lives. You talk about personality. Sir Srinivasan, Ma'am Andrea, they've been talking about universities. My stance is, there have been various cases, you will agree with me, where children are really fascinated to go abroad and study there. But most of them are not able to adapt. They return. The life skill development is very important. The skills to adapt to a new culture is very important. To be able to adjust, to be able to find your own space in the system is very important. And this is what international curriculum actually trains the children for. You find your understanding of your perspective. You learn to respect your own self. You're simply not replicating what your teacher has taught or what your peers think. You learn to have your own voice. This is what international curriculum trains the children for. And I think this is a way ahead to international higher education, where if our children go out, they come out excelling. They should not just run back to the homes because they could not adjust. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Indeed, if we study the right curriculum with the right pedagogy, we do have an edge. Mr. Dhillon, talking about an edge, legacy boarding schools like Sinar, Mayo, Welham, Doon have very strong international student exchange programs, which later on also translate into semester abroad programs at the university level. Schools, boarding schools like yours, have children coming in from across the globe to participate in these programs, and our children go there and participate in their living style and in their work culture, in everything that goes there. And it does open up a lot of ideas, and it does also dispel a lot of misconceptions. I remember a grade 7 student who went to the US on an exchange program once, came back, and he was so surprised, and he says, ma'am, I had heard that parents in United States don't care about their children. They throw them out of home the moment they become teenagers and 18 years old. But the family I stayed with, the parents love their children like my parents love mine. I mean, it was such an innocent observation, but he was actually growing up with such a huge misconception about relationships, and relationships as fundamental as family relationships. Do you think, Mr. Dhillon, programs like these, international exchanges at school level and semester abroad at the university level, I mean, abroad within abroad. So if they go to, say, a university in the US, that's abroad in itself, that's international education in itself. But then within the University of United States, a semester in New Zealand, you know. So how do you think these international linkages, the word that Ma'am Andrea used, how do you think they can give our children an edge over the others?
Ma'am, it's a loaded question, and I will endeavor to do justice to it. But to start with, the entire ethos that you mentioned even earlier, you said something about legacy boarding schools, whether Doon, whether Mayo, whether Sana, whether Lovedale. It's a world within a world, and you're right, yes. But at the same time, in spite of being a world within a world, it's very much connected with the world. And one of the wonderful things is that, not only students come from different countries, but also teachers. So when that happens, there is huge amount of richness. Say when children go from India to other countries, let's say they go to Deerfield Academy or they go to Eton, there is a huge amount of value addition. At the same time, if someone from, one of the legacy boarding schools in Britain, after whom many of our schools are patterned, especially the residential boarding schools, if kids come from other cultures, they grow hugely. And see, one of the interesting things is the world now has borders, of course. We need passports. But I would say for education, there are no borders. And finally, it is how educated you are, how enlightened you are, which will make a better world. For example, people don't realize the value of a word like tolerance. The moment we tolerate, the moment we understand, we can move to empathy. And guess what? In the end, we are a global family. You say global village. Well, village starts with a family. It starts with one person belonging to a family, and the entire village being, uncles and aunts and, sisters and brothers and, siblings, and you go on from there. So I would say the first thing, which is an advantage, is one's worldview is broadened. So, like you shared about that delightful child, the parents, they are different, right? But the child found out the parents, they also love their children, nurture their children. So, your worldview changes because of experience. And I'm very fond of books. I love having books around. I would love to read, given the time, of course. Sometimes you don't get the time. And I would love every child to read, not just online, but, with real books. But ma'am, there is so much more to education than what we find between the covers of books. Life itself is an education. Nature is an education. And I would say travel is an education. So the moment you leave your home, the moment, even when you come to a residential school, you've left your home for a second home. So you go out of your comfort zone, your education starts, right? And the moment you leave for another country, well, you get even more, I would say, learned. And, you not only get very practical, I would say, in dealing with the world, but also you learn diverse things, including soft skills, which are so important. So that is one. The other is connections. The moment you leave your family, the moment you leave your tribe, you leave your state, you leave a nation, you leave a continent, the connections are wonderful because suddenly you connect with cultures, you connect with cuisine, you connect with music, all kinds of things. And see, if everyone were the same, it would be so boring. So I would say I'm all for international travel for education. That's a wonderful thing. And guess what? We don't know if the child who's traveled to, let's say, Yemen or Saudi Arabia or Italy for a semester to learn, we don't know whether that child picks up enough culture, enough of language, and finally joins the foreign service and in time becomes ambassador to that country. We don't know that. So, once you go, it's huge, the opportunities, the future. And guess what? There is an immense amount of self-confidence. And as I said earlier, it is the intangibles that actually add value to anyone who travels for education. Thank you.
Mr. Dillon, thank you for that brilliant perspective. It indeed was a loaded question, but I am so thrilled to hear your response to it because it was a very, very substantive response to the question. You touched two very, very sensitive issues in your response when you talked about tangibles and culture. We worry. I mean, I have a student who went to Australia. Ma'am Andrea, he went to Australia, comes from a business family, the only son of the family. Father runs a brilliant, well-established business. Came back so overwhelmed with the culture of Australia that came back literally obstinate and stubborn, insisting that his parents wind up the business here and migrate to Australia. It was a huge challenge for the parents to sit him down and talk about this being a little impractical. So while we are talking about closed doors and boundaries, we also sometimes go to the other end of the spectrum and struggle. A beautiful balance of respect and feasibility and reality and embracing, and all of that needs to be put in. Mr. Dillon, would you like to talk about a little about what it means in terms of a cultural identity? Because in this case, in this family, one could see that the family was struggling for its cultural identity in terms of an immigration to Australia. They were very happy to embrace the culture. They were happy to have their son come back with a lot of excitement, with a lot of learning, but got very worried. So sometimes there is a little worry about the nation state concept. A nation as in a place which is bound by governance and bound by, some not prehistoric, some historic criteria. Mr. Pandey in the previous session said something very beautiful and said that if our universities and international education does it right, then these youngsters who will grow up will dissolve all boundaries. And maybe we see a day when we don't need a visa to visit a country. We are actually, in letter and spirit, one world. So a word, Mr. Dillon, about the cultural identity vis-a-vis a nation state identity, if you'd like to say something.
Ma'am, I can completely understand the example you shared. It's possible to, be overwhelmed. It's possible. And I would say that, again, the important thing is one's values, because values, by the way, ma'am, are mostly universal, and one's grounding, whether family and, the first school, I would say, is the family. The first teachers are usually the mothers, and of course, often the fathers, but it is the family that starts, our education, and that is what grounds us. Now, wherever we roam, I would say it is something we carry with us. We are ambassadors of our country. That's the first thing. And, whether our family or I would say our state or our nation, we actually carry the flag. That's the very first thing. Now, I just want to share very briefly, on 15th August in India, one feels very delighted to, unfurl the tricolor. You're full of pride. But the moment you are in another nation, whether you're in Indonesia, which respects Indians greatly, or the UAE, if you were to see the tricolor in the sky at the embassy, when you go to the consulate in Dubai and you see the tricolor, it's a great feeling of pride for one's nation. And when it's flashed on the Burj, you see it in light and you see it so, tall and strong, it is a feeling of great pride. So I would say we must first take pride in our culture, in our values, and in our nation. Because, being a global citizen doesn't mean that you're not loyal to your own flag and your own country. It doesn't mean that. And the entire, the education that, let's say, we give in our schools, I would say go back to Gandhiji, because it starts with character. If there's no character education, well, started with what happened in the Second World War. They started with that, which ties in very well with what the UN says. In 1945, the UN was formed. And guess what? In 1948, they said, every citizen has rights, no matter where you are, because we belong to the human family. So I would say being a global citizen starts from being a good citizen of your own country, whether you come from India or you come from, Nepal, or you come from Indonesia. You start with being a good citizen, because guess what? Global citizenship has the same values. And I would say we cannot run away from globalization. Like that child who went to Australia and got overwhelmed. Guess what, ma'am? Even at home with social media, with the internet, they can want to live in LA, or they can want to live in, say, Bali, So what I'm trying to say is, again, it is the golden mean which is important. And I would still say a child must travel, but come back with the intangibles that matter. Certain things we can kind of dispense with also when we travel, So I would say, let's pick the best and come back to India and then share it with our country.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Again, I'll pick from your response when you say a good citizen, a good global citizen, first has to be a good citizen of your own country. And I'll put this question to both Mr. Sri Ram and to Ma'am Rothgi. Maybe I'll get two different perspectives on the question. I had a student who I noticed would not sing the national anthem. So every time in the assembly, the whole school would be singing the national anthem, except this one child. Initially, I thought it's just complacency. I also thought that maybe, there's a good, big grown-up young man doesn't feel the need to sing as long as he's standing in reverence. The respect is what really matters. Kind of ignored it till one day I actually asked him straight to his face. I said, I've never seen you singing the national anthem. Guess what, Mr. Dillon? He turns back and tells me, I will never sing the national anthem till the plight of Kashmiri Pandits in India is addressed and sorted. It shook me. It badly, badly shook me. And I started looking for telltale signs of this mindset. Be a good citizen of your own country before being a global citizen. Mr. Sriram and Ma'am Rothgi, you take turns if you please. What do you think are some of the things that principals must watch for or safeguard against or wary of in their school environment? And what are perhaps some of the things that they must actively, and for want of a better word, aggressively promote without fear of it being sensitive? I remember Doon School, their favorite prayer song, Mr. Dillon would agree, is Lappe Aati Hai Dua Ban Ke Tamanna Meri. And one former teacher of Doon School became a principal of a school in a small town in India and sang that poem in the assembly. And he had a whole bunch of local population up in arms against the rendition of Lappe Aati Hai Dua, and felt that perhaps this is being racial. To be able to bring up and rear children with character, values, respect, and tolerance, as principals, we carry a huge responsibility. So, Ma'am Rothgi and Sir Sriram, what are the things that you think principals of schools and higher education institutions must watch for or promote aggressively to build a very safe and secure world?
Ma'am Rotaki, would you like to first answer this?
Sir, please carry on, please.
Yeah, I think as a principal, I mean, I can relate to what is happening here at Man School. We give an equal platform for everyone without being specific about anything that can cause, a change in mind of a student or have an impact on the student in terms of the way that the example that you've just given, the way he thinks. We at Man School, we celebrate all festivals and treat them equal. Every festival, everyone has to take part. So this way we give an equal platform and ensure that there is no bias towards any particular religion or caste or any such sensitive aspect being touched upon. I think in the example you related, somewhere the child has been exposed to a situation where there has been an impact about the plight of the person that you discussed. I think as long as we give a scenario or an environment to the students to be equal and to be inclusive in what we do, I think we will solve this problem to a large extent. And I think this should be the outlook of all the universities as well, the international universities, not to be very specific about any particular aspect and give a generic platform for everyone to coexist. I think it will be a fantastic way to solve this problem. Ma'am Rotaki.
Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am, in my opinion, what I actually think, sensitizing children right from a very tender age is very important, is of paramount importance, because, we get children from different background. We know that they come from families that may be sensitive, may not be sensitive. And the way they have been, brought up, that leaves a mark on them. So getting children to the school, sensitizing them to different cultures, different people, be it black, be it white, be it dwarf, be it tall. I mean, we have a very, very significant and an important role to play. Here, I would like to, give an example. I was just going through an admission query. The parents have come in and both the children are adopted. And the question that they put to me, ma'am, is there any discrimination in the school that happens, as rightly, talked about by Miss Andrea? I was like, no, certainly not. Why will children discriminate? I mean, I'm in Udaipur, and it's a place where generally you do not see a lot of disparity, right? But they say, ma'am, both my kids are generally addressed as Chinese because they come from Northeast and they're adopted. It took me a while to respond to them, because we certainly, at times, even adults, we make this mistake of, labeling people. And this is what I keep telling my teachers, labeling is something that we must get rid of, come what may. Now, when these children come to a very, beginning class, like say, for example, the child is coming to grade 1, and if the child is coming from a background where such things are already in the culture, in the mind, it really takes time, effort, and patience to completely change the mental structure of that child. And ma'am, truly speaking, it takes a lot of effort on the part of the school to, bring that culture of being one, the feeling of oneness and everything. We may be very optimistic in talking about it as schools. We may be making a lot of promises, but at the end of the day, the school may be a single unit comprises of individuals. And
yeah, please go on. Yes.
No. I'm just saying that, yes, it is an effort on all our part. As principals, certainly it's a Herculean task that we have to do, to really bring in the, the notion of globalization, where there are no boundaries, where everybody's sensitive to the needs of others, to the looks of others, to the demands of others. So certainly, ma'am, schools can never do away with this responsibility. And I'm very sure as principals, it is all the more important for us to set an example and keep training and motivating our teachers, our children to let that feeling of oneness seep in them.
I think that's brilliant, very well put. Coexistence, as pointed out by Mr. Srinivasan, and sensitizing, as pointed out by Ma'am Rashi, are the key words. We see today, especially the recent events and trends in the world politics, sometimes show a very disturbing emerging world order, which is towards multipolarity, and it sometimes leads to literally at the cost of maybe fear, sometimes is pointing to a world of jousting, which is truly a game of balance of power. Our younger generation is getting inducted into this world basis the information that they gather from social media. Mr. Srinivasan, what do you think is our responsibility? How do you see us being able to deal with this challenge so that our children who step out of our schools and universities step into a world which is not biased by the influx of information that is put out through the social media?
Ma'am, to be frank, it's a very difficult proposition, but yes, we can make attempts to ensure that the students don't go on the wrong track. Let us understand one thing, very clearly, that the students are heavily into social media, and if there is something that we try and do to get them away from social media, that's something which is going to be very difficult. They are going to be in it, so let's accept that as the first point of action. Social media has, like any other resource, has its pluses and the minuses, has its pros and cons. So what we need to do is to leverage the social media for positive learning outcomes. Now, this is possible with the huge amount of tools that are available in the social media platform that one can leverage in the classroom for the students for the benefit of their learning. Many students, many schools have been doing it very effectively. We, as through this webinar, Zoom and the Teams and Google Meets and so platforms are making it possible for us to connect with each other. In terms of learning tools, we have plenty of tools like Edmodo, Kahoot, TED-Ed, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, blogging. Plenty of tools that can be used effectively to channelize the students to work towards the positive side of learning. But having said that, one should ensure by sensitizing, as Ma'am Rohatgi said, we need to sensitize students about the goods and the bads and tell them that what is bad should not be something which they should look into. And I think there is one fine tool. I mean, I would like to use this opportunity to explain that maybe in 30 seconds, something called a mystery Skype. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. We can collaborate with students around the world. Teaching geography is a fantastic way by using mystery Skype. By understanding the concept of global citizenship can be well explained using mystery Skype. So these are some of the tools that can be used effectively in ensuring that the social media can be used for effective teaching learning outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Sriram. We are almost at the close of the session, but I can't resist the temptation of asking one last question to Ma'am Andrea. We know, Ma'am Andrea, that overseas, there was a study in 2013 where they identified certain skills that employers identify and value in candidates who go for overseas education. Leadership qualities and global perspective was a major one, which you handled, which you addressed by talking to us about your international leadership program. As quickly as possible, can you also speak a little about fostering institutional partnerships to promote global citizenship?
Sure. So this is something we take very seriously at our university, and it's something that I've seen my partners in India also taking quite seriously in terms of selecting the right partners from around the world for the right types of collaborations. It used to be the model that I think I've forgotten who raised it, but there was a point made earlier today that any country which accepts international students benefits enormously economically from that. So it used to be the trend that the universities that were overseas, it was all take rather than give. It was sort of like, give us your lovely students, they will pay us high fees and we will benefit. Now the types of partnerships that we see are more collaborative in nature. So for example, my architecture faculty is pursuing relationships in market where they'll do collaborative teaching, they'll do joint supervision of PhD theses, they'll be working on projects together. Some of my other, my humanities department is working with another university in India where they are doing it, they are trying to get up an online model of our international leadership program where students from the two universities can collaborate. So I think these are the types of institutional partnership models that universities should be pursuing, where it's not just about student mobility, it's about how each partner can invest in the local context where they're operating. It's not just about bringing the students over. What can you give back to the countries where your students are coming from? How can you grow the relationships between faculty so that you're researching together, you're innovating together, you're benefiting the larger global context wherever those partners are based?
Thank you so much. And like the NDTV anchors say, running completely out of time, we are winding up now. Thank you, everyone. But just before we sign up, one word takeaway from each one of you, 10 seconds each speaker, just one word. Ma'am Rothgi, one word message to the audience, one word.
Let international education grow on the grounds of tradition.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Sriram.
I think empower students as leaders at a young age and expose them to global concerns.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dhillon.
Ma'am, certainly peace, justice, and strong institutions so that when our children go abroad, they do well and they become excellent, I would say, citizens of not only their own country, but of the globe.
Ma'am Andrea, one last word.
Global citizenship is about inclusive citizenship rather than exclusive citizenship. And I think whether you bring that back to your own country or settle elsewhere, it benefits everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you, ScooNews, for giving me this opportunity. God bless us all. Thank you very much. God bless Ravi for this fantastic event. Thank you. God bless us all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Early in the morning, or is it a pleasant spring afternoon back home in the United Kingdom?
It's a lovely spring morning. In fact, the sky is blue. I can see trees and daffodils and all sorts of spring things out of the window.
We are in the early 40s, and you are making us jealous. Yeah.
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Early in the morning, or is it a pleasant spring afternoon back home in the United Kingdom?
Why, Colonel?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think.
Lovely spring morning. In fact, the sky is.
Good afternoon, Harriet, Colonel Sekhar, Harinder, Hani sir, and Kanak. I think someone of you has a YouTube or Facebook live going on in the background.
We are in the early 40s,
And I think that's Colonel Sekhar.
Very well, thank you. How are you?
we are repeating ourselves.
Colonel Sekhar, do you have Facebook Live or YouTube in any of your other windows? You'll have to shut that off.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect. So thank you very much for joining on time. I think we are a little earlier than time. That's 6 minutes. But yeah, I mean, we can go live and we can start now since we are live streaming and there are many people watching us all. So over to you, Colonel Sekhar.
Right. Good afternoon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here handling the session. Hello, Dr. Jakpreet. Congratulations on spending a year as the headmaster of Doon School. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Nearly over 10 months. Thank you very much, Colonel Sekhar.
How is it? How is it to be in the hot seat or in the cold seat?
Well, a moderate seat, I would say that, because difficult times, yes, challenging times. And I always say that leaders are tested in hot waters. And that is where I stepped in, because with the COVID times, taking over the leading school in the country, and of course, being the headmaster where everybody's eyeing on you, and the difficult times, I think that's where you have to prove your mettle. And that's what leaders are for.
As expected, you have set the stage by being as frank as you always are. Kanak Gupta, good afternoon. How is life treating you?
Good afternoon, Colonel Sekhar. Absolutely fine. Good to see you. Good to connect again.
Great to see you. And as usual, when you made those points, when I shared those notes, you jumped all over it and said you are making us feel nervous. That made me feel doubly nervous.
You have no idea how nervous we've all been ever since you sent us that message that come prepared and this is not going to be a generic discussion.
You are married? You are married?
Yes, I am.
You are married. So then no nervousness matching anything of that nature just before you talk to your wife. Anyway, that's a sexist remark. Harriet must, I apologize for that. How are you? How are things at your end?
Here in the UK, everything is well. I'm obviously here at Aberystwyth University. I also joined just over a year ago, just as the pandemic was hitting, just as lockdown was hitting. So although I was supposed to move from London to Aberystwyth a year ago, I didn't actually make it here until September. So I've been working for the university for a whole year and have been on the campus for a whole 30 minutes.
Wow. 1800 seconds inside the campus. That's some achievement during these times. But as I can see, watching a lot of television, especially courtesy Prince Philip, what I see is a lot of the businesses are reopening. And you would understand that Rishi Sunak, your Chancellor of the Exchequer, is somewhat of a favorite in India because he's the son-in-law of a very, very Indian iconic businessman, Dr. Narayana. So how is he doing? Is he giving you a lot of money?
He seems to be keeping everybody afloat, which is really good to see. So yeah, I think there could be huge disrest at this point if we're closing people's businesses down. He's keeping them afloat, which is great.
Afloat is the operative word. Hello, Harinder Chabra. How are you? How infinite are you?
Oh, very much, very much. Thank you for having me, Colonel Sekhar. So all good. In fact, I'm not in India currently. I'm abroad, and I'm going to get my COVID vaccine. I'm getting very nervous more for that than for this discussion.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm in the Middle East.
You're in the Middle East. I have taken the vaccine. It is quite a reasonable thing. Whichever vaccine they do, there is initially a bit of hoo-ha. People try to exaggerate it, but you feel good. A bit of fever. 1 crocin paracetamol, you should be, and you're also married?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so then COVID vaccine cannot challenge you. Your wife would do it much more. Right, okay. So how I would do, I have shared you that, but that's just a guide for all of you. I would start off with Ms. Harriet, and from there go. And as the session progresses, we will encourage a very healthy debate. I request all of you to keep your answers to about 90 seconds or so initially, and then we can take it on. The previous session was wonderful hearing Dr. Gurmeet touched upon some very difficult issues in terms of what are the challenges, and I hope to take on from there. Are we ready, Ravi? Can we go on air now?
Sure. You were already on air, and everyone was listening to your
Okay, right.
wife stories and the vaccine stories. But
Right.
yeah, before we formally start,
Yeah.
since you congratulated Dr. Jagpreet Singh for completing a year, I mean, we all should congratulate you for your new role, I mean, that you have taken up. So if I'm allowed to share, I mean, Dr. Jagpreet Singh, I mean, especially for you, I mean, he has come a little closer to all of us. He has joined the Jagran Education Society as the Chief Development Officer based out of Uttar Pradesh. So we'll get to meet more often. So congratulations, Colonel Sekhar. And from here, you can start. And a lot of educators are listening. Yeah. And I'm the first to break this news. Just the way I was the first when I broke the news that Dr. Jagpreet has joined the Doon School. So thank you, and over to you, Colonel.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Wonderful, humble, and thank you for the opportunity. A great new initiative, scholarships, internationalism, higher education, the works. Congratulations, Ravi, for starting off an initiative in the midst of some very difficult times.
Thank you.
So, namaste, good morning, good afternoon, kushamdeen, vanakkam, salam alaikum to everyone listening all around. Ugadi, Vishu, Bihu, greetings to each and every one of you. And for those of you starting off with Ramzan, let this be a time for reflection. Right. International higher education improved graduate employability. Sometimes as you read it, it itself is loaded. I always ask this question, is education or graduation a prerequisite for success or happiness or peace in life? I'm not quite sure. We would look at it, especially in these COVID times. The smile of my great friend from Doon tells me more of the story. So in terms of higher education, improved graduate employability, how do we tackle it? That's the second aspect of it. In fact, as I start off with this, I have these two books in front of me. One is by Hart Gardner, who talks about the fine minds of the future. The other one, for Harriet to know, is by Devdutt Patnaik, somebody who writes a great deal about Indian culture and ethos, and he talks about dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Maybe a mixture of both will take us forward. So without wasting too much of your time, my first question is to Harriet. Sitting there after spending a wholesome 1800 seconds in your new university, what is your perspective of higher education, present continuous COVID, and how do you analyze it from Great Britain? Over to you.
So I think, I mean, obviously higher education is integral for educating the workforce and for a nation. You know, it's one of the most important things there is in terms of driving a nation forward, in my opinion. I mean, in terms of the situation here in the UK at the moment, everything has just been given a huge shake-up with the pandemic, plus the impact of Brexit on top of everything. It's been quite a complicated time for us over here. So in terms of sort of looking at student sentiment, at looking at the sentiment of people around the world in terms of what they're looking for in education, we look, of course, at applications, numbers of applications in the first instance. What's been quite interesting recently is having seen the numbers of applications from students who are based within the UK increase enormously to Aberystwyth University. And mainly from students who are based in cities right now. And because of the pandemic, of course, students are in their halls of residence, and if there's a lockdown, they're stuck in there and there's nothing they can do other than go for a walk. And when you're in a place like, I think you can see from my background, that looks like this, it's not so bad that the only thing you can do is go for a walk every day. You know, there's space to breathe, everywhere is within walking distance, you don't have to squeeze onto a metro or anything like that. So we've seen huge increases in students from within the UK, students from London, students from Manchester are really keen to come and study here, which is great news for us. In terms of international students, again, numbers of applications are increasing, which again is great for us to see. And I think that's in part because, you know, although there is a lot of uncertainty with the pandemic, and I would by no means say that the UK has handled the situation particularly well, you know, like most nations, we've sort of been making it up as we go along. But we're on to a winner with the vaccination process. So we're hoping to have everyone vaccinated by the end of July. By the time we hit September, hopefully we'll be in a position where actually international students will be able to get their vaccination here on the NHS, which will be fantastic.
Right.
European applications, on the other hand, since Brexit, right down. So they have completely disappeared, which is a shame.
Yeah, discussing about Brexit will take us somewhere else. But a good point, but the question which I would follow, thank you for your input, I'd follow up with Jackpreet this. First of all, do you think we require education abroad? Do you think that our students require that kind of cross-cultural inputs? Why can't our students only be educated in India and be safe with Indian cultural values, with all the challenges Gurmeet Bindra spoke about? Jackpreet.
Well, thank you, Colonel, for asking me this question, and I'll carry on from where Harriet ended. I think Ms. Harriet had a very relevant point to discuss on. When we talk about we are the hardcore Indian school and the school for the Indian boys and with Indian values, but unfortunately, the IB in our school has taken a bigger run for that. And I must tell you, out of the batch of 90 this year who are appearing, who are about to take the board exams, they are not sure about whether they would really have the IBO. It's not very clear whether they would have an exam. IGCSE has just finished with their March, of course. But then I'm not sure whether we'll have board exams. But I must very happily say that 63 of my boys got university of their first choice in the early applications. So what I'm saying is with ED, though in UK, when Ms. Harriet was talking about, it is conditional because they do have to produce. Now that's where my question will come later. What will happen to those candidates because they've got a conditional and their board exams are not happening? If IBO is giving a predicted, which is higher than the last year. So I'm only wondering what will really truly happen to those boys. But having come to the higher education, what you were talking about, higher education for every child is a goal set they want to achieve because that is their careers. That's where they aspire to be. But employability, when you talk about, Colonel Chekhar, I have a different opinion. Employability does not necessarily mean only raising capital or financial aspect, but it also includes subject knowledge, core skills, and competencies for work. Now, when I say that in India, if we just go back on a little graph of what was prepared by the Indian National Association of College and Employment, it was US takes the lead with nearly, if I'm saying 45%. Others were 27, but Australia was 15 and UK was 6%. I'll come to why UK is 6%. Now, this statistics is not by me. This statistics is also approved by the Indian Association of College and Enrollments. Now, why is that? Because I'll ask quickly from Ms. Harriet, because it is very, very surprising what happened in the very recent thing with the change of laws. Particularly talking about the 2 years were given to the postgraduate, to the undergraduate students. And after doing the undergrad, they could wait for 2 years, look for a job, which amended later. 2016, an amendment came, 2019, it got amended again. 21 is a big hope. So we'll come to that. Looking at that, UK is a very hot destination, which I'll come to you later, Ms. Harriet, because I want to learn from you. UK is not 6% what is showing. There are larger community which wants to go there, more than US and Canada. But the only thing is we have to be more approachable to them. And talking about postgraduate, we have to see about that law coming in 21 should be applicable for the students now.
Right.
It is. Just sorry to interrupt on that point, but it is applicable. So anybody who's...
We'll get back to you on what is good about UK and not, because these are the initial parts. Yes. Right. So we heard, whether it's from Ms. Harriet or from Jackpreet, two, if I may say so, relatively elite concepts in terms of where their students are, what they are expecting. Kanak Gupta, if India has to move forward, and India, as I mentioned, this the destination everyone wants to come in. And I remember, yes, Minister Sir Humphrey saying that British professors are all over the world flogging sociology courses in the Middle East. Almost everyone wants the Indian student. So, as one of the panelists spoke in one of the previous sessions, if India has to move forward, it has to become more the Indian cricket team. In the sense, we should have a Dhoni from Ranchi, a Kohli from Delhi, and also a Mohammed Shami from Calcutta. How would you, from the position you are in, endeavor to have this wide spread? Kanak Gupta.
Great, thanks, Shekhar. Before I get to that, I just want to respond to one thing that Harriet said that, with Brexit, it made very complicated. Harriet, come to India, see the election rallies, and you'll forget what Brexit complication is all about. So, I think that's a great question, Shekhar, and I strongly believe that for our higher education to fall in place, or for our students to aspire to Indian universities, we'll have to look at the very basics, right? So when I look at it as me as a student, when I was trying to find the right place to go, what was I looking for? I was looking for the campus experience. I was looking for the faculty profile. I was looking for the internship opportunities. I looked at as to, what was the placement opportunities for me available. Generally, during when I was studying, it was about 5 to 6 months after graduation that you would find a job. Now, that's a very long time when you look at the Indian context. There'll be a lot of educators who would think that the university would have a placement cell, and you should have a pre-placement offer even 6 months before you graduated. So you should look at that. But I also feel that credit transfer facility that's available in a lot of foreign universities, we don't have that system as much in India. I think that will be the delta, Colonel Shekhar, that we're looking for building a team of a Dhoni, a Virat, a Suresh Raina, etc. Because if I could say go to a University of Mumbai and do a course of choice, and then I could get transferred to the University of Singapore or to the UK somewhere, and again pick up a course of my choice. As one of the speakers in one of the earlier panels was talking about a visa-less society and knowledge economy where there are no visas for students at all. I think that's a great idea. And then if we need to make that happen, the credit transfers would need to happen as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would expand on what you said. I am deliberately playing the devil's advocate. Instead of us going abroad for studies, why can't the IPLization of Indian universities happen? Let's have a John Wright coming in. Let's have a Saurav Ganguly leading it. Mm-hmm. So that would be the way our 320 million students will go forward. I'll expand on it once I come back to you, Kanak Gupta. Thank you for your answer. To Harinder Chabra. Picking up from what Kanak has said, in terms of credit, transfers, etc., are all there. But the point highlighted is there is something inherently wrong with the Indian higher education system. Do you generally agree? If so, what are the options? If not, how do we get the globalized system working in our favor? Harinder Chabra.
Yeah, I think there are 2-3 main issues that we face today within the country. One is the number of seats in quality higher education institutions. So I think with the expansion of the IIM franchise, that step has been taken. And I don't know if I'm sure most of us are aware that now more and more IIMs are now offering undergraduate programs, which is the integrated 5-year MBA, 4-year MBA, or a BBA. So I think they're trying to fill that gap, but that's something that will take its own sweet time. And for these new IIMs to build a brand and bring in the best recruiters, because let's not forget, it's all about employment at the end of the day. We're not a country yet who looks at skills. We look at knowledge, and we want an employment related to that knowledge, which is very unfortunate, and it's very different from what happens abroad. It's more about skill set. It's more about what you bring to the table as a person, and not necessarily what you've studied. It is a part of it, but not all of it. In India, it's not that much still acceptable. So you need to be studying that particular subject to be able to get that particular job, because somehow, given the way CBSE is structured, given the way, and they're carrying it forward to higher ed. Yes. So that's one big change that we need to be more skill focused. We need to be more looking at how do we get children, even in higher ed, to learn the skills which will help them, be part of any system whatsoever, India, abroad, any area, any field of study, any field of work. The second issue that I see is in general about quality of the teaching learning process within even higher education institutions. again, very few limited people do research here. There is emphasis, more and more new private universities coming up to help their faculties improve their profile in terms of research, publishing of research, peer-reviewed journals, and so on. And I think that's something that when Indian students miss in India, and that's where foreign destinations, and not just from employability point of view, but even from knowledge gain, even if that is the objective, that's where we miss out, that we don't have enough research happening in India where students feel that they're part of the process.
Very fair. You have highlighted a very important point. Sorry to intervene because I wish to get in more questions, but the government has got a significant challenge. You have the masses, 320 million is the population of the US, that many students we have. We still have a higher education entry of about 26%. So we have close to 120 million students attempting the class 12. Only 26% of them reach colleges. The rest of them, where do they go? And as you correctly pointed out, the skill sets, why can't we be engineers, dancers, and plumbers? Hopefully the new education policy will tackle it. So that same question to you, Jagtree. How would you look at it in terms of, one, as a nation, we require to have more graduates coming in. Two, equally, the challenge Harinder highlighted in terms of quality, in terms of research, in terms of the ability to have skills and a wider understanding, and our own mindset that X should have a certain degree to be able to do something. So how would we tackle it? 90 seconds.
It's a very good question, because what Mr. Gandhi also said, that what in Indian university we are giving a different set of skills. Now, what if we compare it with the skill employers want in college graduates abroad? Now, this is something, a study what I did was NACE, that is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They said, what are the skill sets required for the graduate students abroad? It's critical thinking and problem solving. It's oral written communication. It's teamwork and collaboration. It's digital technology. It's leadership. It's professionalism. It's career management. It's global and intercultural fluency. I say when we apply for undergrad courses in Indian universities, how many universities, when they have the a la carte and they give out a drop-down options, how many of do weightage of this skill sets what are required? Now, if I may just take you a little to the National Association of College and Employees again, if you see the data, Colonel Shekhar, will shake you up. That the percentage of new hires in last 12 months who were new graduates, I'm talking about new graduates, was 60%. 49.3% of the new hires were from on-campus interviews. 82.1% of employers were diversity recruiting efforts. These data tells you what is happening in the universities in US, in UK, in Canada, Australia, elsewhere. We need to have a complete revamp of the curriculums and the curriculums in our universities. We need to prepare our generation for a new skill sets. These skill sets which are given at par what are in the universities abroad. Why are the children of today from the schools are going and taking a path of foreign universities? Because the Indian universities are not helping them out with their interests and with their careers. This is where I want to come in again. We need to have an introspect into our own university systems. Where do we lack? What are we not catering to? Just having few private universities do not give a platform or an opening to all the students passing out from schools. And hence this, it's not a trend, but a lot of people say it's a trend. Well, it's a lot of research. It's a lot of research which goes behind when a child takes over a university. I remember one of my boy in the school applied for 22 universities. Now that is some research. That extended essays, the sort of LORs and the all preparation, what has to go into that. They are doing that because the Indian universities are not catering to their interest. That is my answer to your question, Colonel Shekhar.
I lost it in between, my apologies, but the fundamental question you highlighted about is in terms of skills, skill sets, etc. My question to you, you have done lots of interviews. Do you get a candidate within the first 3, or how many interviews do you have to conduct to get one good candidate?
Well, if you ask me honestly, it does need a lot of research for that.
Well, that's straightforward numbers. 10 interviews, how many you take?
Sometimes none.
Sometimes none. Good. So we pick up from there and come to Harriet and ask her the question we were discussing. We talk about a child being born mother friendly, after that house friendly, after that school ready, from school to higher school ready, to college ready, to job ready, to employability ready. In the midst of all of this, we forget to make him or her life ready. Are our universities on the right lines, or are we still in this hugely commercial world only looking at what the next quarter results come up, and long term, no sustainability, none of these things happening? And how are your universities handling it?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think it's something that all universities need to be asking themselves. Are we preparing our students for life? You know, graduation is one thing, getting a job is another thing, but life is, you know, it's a really difficult thing, and I think it often gets neglected. People assume that you'll just be able to deal with life, but life throws a lot of curveballs to you. Like I say, I'm a strong believer that university should be a place where students or young people have a chance to practice at life. It's still a safe environment. You've moved away from home, but you're kind of on your own. There are people there to support you and help you through anything that might happen. But it's a chance that it's a place where you can learn that failing is okay. And it's about giving those young people the tools to learn to pick themselves up again when they do fail, to learn to evaluate what happened, learn from their mistakes, learn to make improvements so that when it happens again, they know how to deal with that situation. So I think it's really, really important to give them a sense of independence, to let them learn for themselves from being in the real world. I think it's also very important to make sure that universities are integrating work experience and real life industry case studies, for example, into the curriculum, so that when they go out into the world of work, you know, it's not from an old outdated case study that was written in 1990 and gives a good example of businesses merging or something. It's about companies that are dealing with a pandemic and how they can diversify themselves, looking at the modern needs of companies today. I think that's really, really important. And I'd say having that interdisciplinarity as well. So making sure that students are equipped for obviously their subject area. And this is something that Jagpreet was just talking about now, and all the panel actually, is making sure that students have an experience of other subject areas, so that they have the transferable skills that will help them through life, that will help them in their career in the future, but also in the day-to-day things. You know, you can't have a student who, you know, an artist, for example, they've studied fine art, they know exactly how to paint a painting, but how do they sell their work? They have no idea of business, they have no idea of marketing. They need to have those skill sets as well to be successful in the future, and to learn what to do when things go wrong. And I think that's really important.
Failure and recovering from failure. It's always said of both Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal that don't look at them when they win. Look at them when they fail, how they behave and recover from it. Wonderfully said, Harriet. Now to Kanak Gupta, let's come to the meat of this discussion. We have a student from, say, Sri Rampur in Calcutta. Elections are going on, so I'm saying something politically correct. The guy has scored 95% plus without any kind of tuition, as we call it. How do we get this youngster into a top university through scholarships and through a system? And what are the changes we require in the system to have an equitable and an accessible approach for any student in India? Initially, Kanak Gupta, and I'll request Harinder to follow it up with that.
So, Shekhar, I think we would first need to sit with this student at Sri Rampur in Kolkata and find out what his aspiration actually is. Because I think that is very, very important to find out what university he would want to go to, what courses he would like to go in for, because the cookie cutter model for higher ed is essentially the problem what Dr. Jagpreet was talking about. He highlighted the 21st century skills, and I really believe that that's what's required as well. But the problem is that we talk about the entry system, and then we talk about the placement. What happens in the middle as to what kind of life experiences the student would have, what would they learn from their peers, what kind of projects would they be involved in. Harriet also talked about internship opportunities, which has a life-altering situation for the student. The universities don't talk about that. So this student in Srirampur and Calcutta should actually go ahead and research on that. We should be able to provide a platform where you interact not only with the admission counselor, not only with the admission director, not only with the faculty, but students who are there at campus and who have recently graduated. The predictability also, Colonel Shekhar, will need to come into place. You don't want people to prepare for jobs which are available in the market in the next quarter or in the next 1 year, but predict somewhere what's going to happen next 10 years. A lot of people pan down on Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg in many ways, but I feel that person did change the world. There is a lot of, we can debate, and that's another debate, but it happened. That predictability happened. I feel that for higher education to work now, it needs to integrate backwards, also taking advice or taking a leap out of the K-12 school segment, where we are now focusing a lot on providing life skills to the students and not just going after a degree, is what we need to do.
Great. Harinder Chhabra, just a nuanced question. You have a student who both his parents are not employed, he's doing outstandingly well. He wants to do a course in photography, he's good at it. Now, you and your team is handling it. What are the steps you would take, and how would you be able to help that student achieve it, despite him coming from a relatively disadvantaged background?
Of course, scholarships play a big role in such scenarios, and I think there are universities who value such people, and their huge endowment funds help them with those opportunities. Unfortunately, in India, not many have. Even look at the IIMs; they don't have huge endowments. They're just trying to get out of government's shackles and trying to build an endowment for themselves. So even the premier most higher education institutions in India depend on the government, right? So firstly, we need to figure a way out how do we ensure our own campuses have endowment funds which can then sponsor such candidates. So I would not name any university here, but there are some new ones who understand this pain. They are working in this area, and going back and relating it to your Dhonis and everybody in the IPL. You look at the success of these children who come from these small towns. I think they are more hardworking. They're more probably equally talented. They just lack the opportunity. So to answer in short is that's the only way, unless there is social philanthropy happening, and there are those things again. But to make it sustainable, you don't have a Zim Premji everywhere. So make it sustainable. Endowment is the way. And more people in India need to be more philanthropic in the area of education. From a nation building point of view, from a long-term perspective, that's something that they need to, donate or kind of build those kind of capacities. I think that's the way for such a child. So if I were to help this child, I think I'll find a university and pitch it hard to them to assess this child and move him
Hopefully,
to the
Ravi
next
is
level.
listening, and he's getting more ideas as to how we have to go ahead. And now coming back to you, Jagpreet, the Arjun Tendulkar is privileged and he gets an IPL contract. We do not have Ishar Kishan getting it. How do we make that a level playing field?
Wonderful question.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's a wonderful observation, and it's very close to my heart, so I intervened exactly when you said that. Not everybody is born with a golden spoon, and not everybody has a platform ready to exhibit. There are children from lesser privileged families. There are children who are doing exceedingly well, hunger in their stomach, and they want to really perform, and they are the achievers. And I must tell you that these are the boys I look forward who have to go to higher education abroad. Not because of anything else, because it gives them an opportunity of growing job opportunities for these students. how to have a fair play level game there. First of all, we must understand that in every school, when they are preparing the students, there are plenty of CSR initiatives now the school is talking about. What Harinder was talking about, the endowment plans, we in our own school, we have a huge scholarship plans. And this is also, let me tell you, it's not only about the schools. When they apply for the universities, what is in the platter? What is there to offer? The universities grab you. Now, there is a boy this year who's got 130% scholarship from Cornell. I mean, this is not ordinary. This boy really deserves it. So I'm saying there is no background. You come from a humble family or you come from Sachin Tendulkar family. If you have prepared your essay well, if you have the right skills, again, Colonel Shekhar, my question, my concern is skill gaps remain on a very high scale in India. And that is what is my concern. Right. And the future of the work today in the world.
My intervention here would be, it's a deliberate devil's advocate. Anyone coming into Doon is naturally an Arjun Tendulkar.
No, I need to correct that. We are a meritocratic school, but meritocratic on the admission test. We do not even see the background. If a child comes from a humble background, he's given 100% scholarship. This is something what I really want to say, that Doon School does not belong to the elite. It may be elitism, but not elite school. And we are the elitist of the elite. Why? Because we accept every boy. There are so many boys, I don't want to really be very pompous in saying that, but we do offer scholarship because there are huge scholarship funds in the school. And these are the boys, when I see by the end of the day, they are the ones who are reaching to US. They are the ones who are reaching to UK. There are boys who are doing Bahrain. They are doing medical. They are the boys who are reaching out to those places. Why? They have fire in the belly. And they've got a very beautiful launch pad where they can launch now. And they have so good skills, which other boys sometimes deprive of.
Right. Yeah, so it's a fair point you are making. I'm glad that you explained that. I hope you're able to hear me, all of you.
Yes.
Are you able to hear me? Yeah, right. Yeah, this question is now coming back to Harriet. Are we now?
Colonel Shekhar, can I just, sorry, I'm very sorry to interrupt. Can I just add something? I was talking to a friend who's into higher education. He helps students to go and study abroad. He works with this company who does large scale kind of support to the students. And one point, and because JPG is in a boys' school, most undergraduate students who go out of India to study abroad are boys, most of them. The girl child is not going enough numbers. I think that's where concerns around safety, the concerns around whether girl child is safe enough to survive on its own at that age. Postgraduate is fine, but I think that's another point that we need to look at. How do we, and that's for Harriet to ponder, how do we make Indian parent and at the same time undergraduate abroad education is more about parent taking a decision for the child at some level. So parents feeling comfortable, getting the parents in the loop on all of these things is very, very critical. And especially the girl child is something that I think foreign universities should do, talk to the parents in India and make it comfortable, because I think Indian women deserve more than they're getting today.
Absolutely. I have two daughters and you have hit it right there. Both of them are in foreign universities. The first thing we check out is that. Great intervention, Harinder. Now coming back to you, Harriet, the question which I have for you is, the pandemic is on, present continues. We expect it to go on for the next 3 to 4 years. Lots of pharma companies are making money. Their bottom lines are going up. Are businesses, especially graduate schools and colleges, working at a life wherein from my college, the next solution for the next pandemic will come? Or are all of us school in our old thoughts? Are we thinking forward, or are we still in that old patronizing thing that anyone coming into Britain has to learn English, has to do this, little realizing that there is much more to the world? Harriet House.
I think, yes, it's a very pertinent question, isn't it? And I think the difficulty is that universities and schools and colleges haven't had enough of a chance to breathe through all this. I mean, there's been so much work that's gone on to, okay, we can't teach face-to-face, but we have this student cohort that needs an education. How are we going to teach them in a way that means that it's safe to do so? So there hasn't been the thinking time to be able to look at the curriculum and then consider what are going to be the changes that need to be made in the future. So I think it's a really difficult topic, but one that needs to be given time and resource, because the world is going to change fundamentally from this point onwards. And there are going to be some companies that do incredibly well, like you say, the pharmaceutical companies, the Amazons of the world, the delivery companies, everything that's online, all the Zooms and the Teams and all of those companies are going to do incredibly well. But the high street, I mean, certainly in the UK, every high street is just crumbling. The shops are dying, and people need to diversify and need to find ways to reinvent the way they work. So I think the skill set that's needed at the moment is that of resilience, is that of entrepreneurialism, is being able to look at what the market demand is and find a way to target that and take advantage of that. I think there are products that haven't even been invented yet that will be incredibly useful going forward. And I think that universities do need to take the time to stop and think about it. But of course, you know, things are changing by the second. Something that we thought would be cleared up by the end of the year is now going on for another 5 years. Who knows? There could be something else. So I think it's looking at those transferable skills as opposed to the knowledge itself. It's teaching students how to find that knowledge for themselves, how to do the research themselves, how to improve on what they're doing so far, and to think outside the box a lot and to collaborate. I think collaboration is really key, and that's where you get the value of international higher education, is that students can compare and contrast what their peers are doing in other countries around the world. And I think that's really important to close down your own barriers and your own ideas and open up your horizons.
Right. Kanak Gupta, with India's population, the demographic dividend being what it is, with Europe, most of Russia, except for the United States, most of them having very limited population growth. India is, for most universities, India is very special. So if those jobs in Japan have to be filled, jobs across have to be filled, there has to be manpower. And there has to be changes which will happen post 2030. What are the 3 steps you would recommend foreign universities to be doing to make Indian students more welcome for them?
So I feel what's happening right now, Colonel Sekhar, is that yes, universities worldwide are focusing on enrollments, are focusing on reduced fees and scholarships, and probably rightly so because of the going times, and they've been tough. But I like your comment when you said that you need to be futuristic and start thinking about the next steps, and it's important for us to bring that. We have the youngest population, and I feel that to inspire this population, what we should talk about, the universities worldwide should talk about, number one, as to how agile is their system, how agile have they been, for example, with the COVID response. It gives a lot of confidence. The second thing I think you should talk about is the safety of the students, because I think we mentioned during the panel that women are not going as much, girls are not being sent abroad as much as we would like. So the safety aspect should be highlighted as well. The third thing that I would like to talk about to students of India is after the graduation, maybe the degree or whatever, diploma, short-term course, whatever, what are the chances that I have for finding a job or establishing my business or getting a visa, getting a work permit? I need to have all that clarity done before I take a decision. And you rightly said, we have the largest workforce. We have a very, very dynamic workforce coming up as well, which is now seen. I wrote an article recently which was called Broken Class of 2020, which I think is going to get extended into the Broken Class of 2021, where I really think that that public rite of passage where all the stereotypes that the American movies have shown us, where the symbolic coming of age, growing of hair, chopping of hair, putting body piercing, all of that, students have missed out on that. But it has changed. It has been replaced by the virtual graduation ceremonies. I feel that the workforce of the future also, we would need to sit down and think about what are these jobs that are going to be there 5 years down the line? What would be the skill set required besides the 21st century skills that we all talked about so passionately? I think we need to think beyond that now. But yeah, to answer your question, these were the three things that I would focus on.
Great. Picking up from what Kanakas said, as an extension, Harinder Chabra, again, I would ask, what are the changes Indian scholastic system, K to 12 system requires to do to make our students better college ready, job ready, and life ready in the context of the new education policy? Harinder Chabra.
Fun. So, yeah, I think one of the things that schools need to realize is that it's a journey that they take along with not just students but their parents. And I think, to be honest, the biggest roadblock is the parent community, how they think about education today. It's not the student. I mean, they understand that they need to learn all these things. They are improving internally within themselves. They see the change. But for parent community to start thinking, okay, this is what my child wants to do, this is what I want him to do, and skills will come with time. There used to be an old saying, this boy is going wayward, getting married, and things will happen on their own, things will be taken care of. That's the old thinking. So put him into a university, he will learn and he will get a job. I think that kind of thinking has to take a back seat, and parents need to be counseled more than ever today. I think that's one big change schools have to bring about. They have to get the parent understand how the world is shaping up. I think parents are still not waking up to it. We are talking about it here, but I think that's one biggest change. Get parents involved very early. And one thing I like about the British education system through the IGCSE mechanism, I've been looking at it very closely, is right from grade 9 they start talking to parents and students, and that discussion is around being a very skill oriented kind of learning. And I'll give you an example, and Harriet can tell me whether it's true or not. Most British schools talk about that universities value geography as a subject in grade year 9 and 10, year 10 and 11, and even 12 and 13, because it exposes children to a huge variety of skills, analytical skills, getting to know the world, getting to know the people of the world. But if you talk to an Indian parent, oh, geography, I mean, come on, geography of all the subjects, right? So that needs to change, and that needs to be, it will not change automatically. We need to take the lead there, and it's a risk. The parents can go against the school saying that this school doesn't understand, this is a pathetic school, they just don't understand the job. Probably that's why students, schools don't do it. Number one. Number two, the issue also is around integration with universities backwards. And I'll give you an example. I'm very passionate about opening students to the real world. We all talk about real life experiences. I want them to do real projects with NGOs from grades 9 to 12. Where I went to a institute which trains people for jobs in the development sector. I said, I want to collaborate with you and create a course for my students. Okay. And let's work on it. Completely not interested. Okay. So universities, institutes, and they run an undergrad and postgrad programs in that area, right? So I think this linkage between university and schools need to take initiatives, and universities need to be open with this for this linkage. We've grossly, underestimate our children's ability to learn beyond the coursework. I think it's just that they don't get enough opportunities. We push them too much into practice and memorizing that we forget that is all about skills. And I think number three to me is, I think again, the schools going way and beyond. I think the schools also need to learn more. I think schools need to participate in discussions like these with people like Harriet and understand more about how things are abroad. Why is it that the West on certain areas opportunities to students in India. Yes, it's short term. Short term, it's fine to to send them abroad maybe the next 20 years. But then, how do we create that ecosystem in India? I think school are a very important party to it because it has to start early. I think the skill building has to start very early. So these are the three important things.
Parents, skill building, backward integration, lots of things to happen. But my last question before the final words are coming through, I want to bring it back to the vast majority of India. CBSE schools are about 25,000, ICSE schools about 3,000. You have less than 1,000 international schools. The vast majority of our 15.5 lakh schools are in the state board sector. As a leading educationist, honey, what would you do to get them to world standards? Quick answer before we go into the summary.
We really will have to I empathize with the education system in India. We have fabricated ourselves in such a context that we are not able to now integrate everything. And we have gone into a dilemma ourselves. We need to get everybody on a common platform, first of all, enrich them with right skills. I empathize with the students of today. I mean, there's so much of stake. There's so much of things happening now. So to get them into the right path, I think we really need to, as what Mr. Kantik was saying, we need to really take them into with the parents holding them on and take them to the right skills they need. And the school has that responsibility. It may be an IB school, an IGCSE school, or it may be a state board school. The skills can be generated in the school in their own curriculums. And the skills I'm talking about are not only the soft skills, the e-skills, but also they can establish a virtual exchange programs where they can take the students on a real life experiences. They may, like what normally I ask my boys to do for a summer school interns. Why don't they go for a summer school internship program where they live in a school, see the lifestyle of the school, and then they learn how they have to conduct themselves to reach there. My only worry is that what we see the number 66,000 in 2000 has gone to 3,01,400 into the undergrad universities in the world today. I'm talking about the statistics till 2016. If that growth has come, somewhere we need to, again, I say, need to have an introvert look, need to look within ourselves, and then look outward to say, how can we prepare our boys and girls to reach out to those universities?
Right. Need to look at ourselves, empathize with the system. Right. That's a good time to go into our final summaries. Miss Harriet, put on your crystal ball. Look at it. You are Mandrake the magician. How would the higher education scene look like 10, 20 years from today?
I'll have to put my special magic hat on, I think, as well, to try and predict the future. I mean, I feel like right now everything is changing so quickly. It's really difficult to say. What with Brexit, what with I hate to say it, but Trump and the changes there in the US system, the politics at play across the world. I think it's really difficult to predict. I would say that there is going to be inevitably a greater emphasis on online learning. I think there will be the flexibility there for students who are, especially at postgraduate level, students who are working and want to upskill themselves as well. So they want to learn at the same time as working, have skill sets which are applicable to the job that they're actually doing. I think that at sort of a lower level, undergraduate level, I think there will be more emphasis on interdisciplinarity, on allowing students to not pick and choose, but look at things from different angles. So, one example at the moment at Aberystwyth University is we've just launched a new series of undergraduate degrees, which are certain social sciences along with climate change. So we're looking at climate change, but not from a scientific point of view, but from a social science point of view. So you can do English studies and climate change, economics and climate change, business and climate change, international politics and climate change. And that's a way that, and all of those programs are interlinked. So the departments share their resource and share different classes. So you're looking at educating students for tomorrow who are equipped with the language and the understanding and the know-how to help change the world, help, deter climate change and reverse the effects there. But it's not only the scientists that are needed, it's also the social scientists as well.
Thank you. I have only a minute to go. Kanak Gupta, if your granddaughter is in school, what would she see in 2040?
So in 2040, my granddaughter would focus on, I'll give you 4 bullet points that I would like her to focus on decision-making skills. I would like her to focus on empathy. She would be more empathetic. She would be more analytic. And this is a personal favorite of mine, and this is a word I use, environmentality is what I would like her to focus on. And before you sign off though, Colonel Shekhar, I have a question for you, because you told us that you let us ask you a question.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll do that.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. Yeah, you can ask now. Yeah, go ahead.
Should Arjun Tendulkar feel bad for his privilege?
Would Sachin Tendulkar feel bad for his
privilege?
Arjun Tendulkar.
Fair question. These are things. My only point is we have to be aware of it. My point is, I am aware that I am a privileged person. I'm the son of an IPS officer. There were so many things which came my way. Do I have a better understanding of the lack of privileges a Mohammad Shami has? And will that equalization happen? For you and me, Mahila Jayawardene picked up Arjun Tendulkar simply he was Tendulkar's son. I have no problems with 19 becoming 20. I have a problem with 15 becoming 19. That's my answer to your question. Right. Harinder Chabra, Infinity School, how infinite will it be in 2047, 100 years of our independence?
Oh, really can't say, but all I can say, it'll always stay true to the child. It will always keep children at the center, and it will always bring them the latest that the world has to offer. So I don't know how infinite that can be, but student centricity is something that we will never let go of.
Student centricity is the focus. Honey, in 2047, as India celebrates 100 years of independence, where do you see Doon School?
I first of all would like to see the Doon School as it is, an aristocracy of service. I think this is what we are forgetting, that we are responsible citizens which have to give back to the service to the global world. And for that, we have to prepare the right global leaderships. And for that, I would always like to say what Harriet said, and what I believe in a lot in Cambridge curriculum, is that we have to stop our boys study in silos. There's a cross-pollination happening. There has to be an integration of the subjects. There has to be a commonality which will develop the right skills. We have to bridge the skills rather than the skill gaps which are coming up, because the future of work is online white-collar workforce. And for that, we have to prepare the global citizens. For that, Doon School is getting ready. And inshallah, in 100 years of India independence, Doon School will show its leadership for which it is known for. Thank you, Colonel Shekhar.
Right. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. Gratitude for having been patient and to answer many of my sometimes obnoxious questions. It's been great fun being part of this wonderful panel. As I look at it, knowledge osmosis has to happen. Equally, the perspective of a white American about Trump will be different from that of an Indian sitting in Delhi. Can the knowledge osmosis balance both in the understanding where a global citizen comes up with Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam? That's a challenge we all have to face. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. For once, this is a panel where the men dominated. In normal panels, which I am part of, men are rarer than the tiger in India. It's the women who dominate. Thank you, Harriet, for being so wonderful. To Harinder, Kanak, and Jakpreet,